body, mind, spirit. This is your weekly wellness tip. Welcome to the Yes to You podcast. I'm your host and the founder of RohiniWellness.com, Dominique D. Wilson. And today's wellness tip is on emotional wellness, in particular, how to deal with social anxiety as an entrepreneur. Now, I want to start off by saying I have always been an introvert and probably always will be, but it's very interesting. I've had so many people come up and tell me that they didn't believe I was an introvert and really couldn't tell because of how well I'm able to make small talk and kind of really work a room. And also, being that I'm a speaker, I have no problem getting on stage, speaking impromptu off the cuff, or, presenting something that I've prepared beforehand. I'm very comfortable with all that stuff. But interestingly, it's the one-on-one interpersonal thing that I've struggled with the absolute most. And being able to walk up to someone I don't know, especially in a crowded room with a bunch of people that I've never seen before, is definitely not a skill I was born with. It's something that I had to learn and that I had to really just get out there and practice with over the years. Now, I can honestly say back in the day, I did have social anxiety. I mean, it was literal anxiety at the thought of going to a party or a networking event where there's a bunch of people who I don't know. But nowadays, even though I may get a little bit nervous, it's not social anxiety. So I want to assure you, if you are struggling in this area and you do have social anxiety, you can actually practice and get to a point where you may have some nervousness, but I want to give you hope that it is possible to get to a point where you do not have social anxiety any longer. It's an individual case-by-case thing. Of course, I cannot speak for everyone. I'm just telling you what I've done and what my journey has been. So with that said, I want to share with you today 7 tips to help you deal with social situations so that you can speak with confidence and be able to put yourself out there. Because if you're not attending conferences, maybe Chamber of Commerce events, meetups, and different gatherings, then it's going to be a lot more difficult for you to really grow and expand your network. And you'll be amazed at how quickly you're able to meet people and the opportunities that come through building these connections. So I hope that you'll take these 7 tips I'm about to share with you and put them into practice. Tip number 1 is to plan ahead. Whenever you know that you have some type of social gathering coming up soon, it's very important to start with your mindset and just wrap your mind around how it is that you want to feel. How do you want to experience this event and what do you want to get out of it? I find that if I have a goal, it gives me a bit of a container for the energy that comes with whatever that experience is. Having a goal will help you to structure your mindset. You can then set an intention for what it is that you want to get out of this experience. And then the next step from there would be to set a time limit for yourself. The event may be a 4-hour event, but that doesn't mean you have to stay for the entire thing. I know that depending on what type of event it is, and I've gotten better at this, but if it's a party or something like that where there's a bunch of people who I don't really know, like really know, I can take about an hour and a half to 2 hours and then I get like literally emotional burnout. So I've learned that about myself. And so I know ahead of time that I'm probably only going to stay for an hour and a half to 2 hours. And even if everybody's still socializing, that's okay. That's my cue to leave. I want to let you know that it is so important to honor this about yourself. Here's what's happened to me in the past when I did not honor that time limit. I could feel that, man, I really am ready to leave, but I don't want to be rude and everybody's still here. So what happened is I would stay the duration of the event. Everything was okay. But the next day I would wake up feeling like I had been hit by an anvil. It was like a socializing hangover, if you will. I felt tired, stressed out. I was a little bit on edge. I had a bad attitude all day, almost like a mild depression. And I would be wondering, what in the world is going on with me? And sometimes it could last a day or even 2 days. And so after dealing with that enough, I have learned that I get drained after being around too many people for too long. And so I have to honor my own boundaries and know that if it's one of those type of gatherings where I'm expending so much energy because I don't know anybody, that's a lot of energy to meet a bunch of new people. You're kind of moving around, having different conversations. There's a limit for me. And if I don't honor that limit, I will pay for the next day, the day after that. I'll be kind of in this dark, cloudy kind of funk. And no one wants to deal with that because we all have to get up the next day. I'm a mom. I have 2 children. I'm running a business. I have to be at my best because I have so many things that I desire to do. And so the way I do that is to make sure that I use my time and energy in a way that honors myself and my personal values. So that first step, plan ahead, includes getting in the right mindset about what you want to experience. Set an intention for what you want to get out of it. Make sure you set a time limit for yourself so that you know ahead of time what time you're going to be there and then what time you're going to leave. That takes the stress out of it. And then, of course, honor whatever those boundaries are for you. The second tip is know something about the event ahead of time. If there's a theme, make sure you know what the theme is. This gives you a little bit of familiarity. What you're doing, you are building a mindset. You're building an idea of what the experience is going to be like before you get there. So you want to know what the theme of the event is, if there's anything going down, if there's an agenda, any information you can get ahead of time. And of course, find out who's hosting the event. This helps you again to prepare, be in the right mindset. There's no surprises and you're not just thrown into cold water. You have some kind of idea of what you're going to expect. All of this is going to help you to have less anxiety around socializing. Tip number 3 is to memorize some type of elevator pitch. This can be 30 seconds to a minute. I honestly wouldn't go a minute. That's a bit long. 30 seconds is all you need because people are going to ask you over and over again, so what do you do? Because for some reason we have this idea that by asking someone what they do, we have a sense of who they are. And of course, that's not true, but that's the way it is. People are going to ask you that until you're blue in the face. So make sure that you have some semblance of an answer to give so that you're not stumbling over your words and then later thinking, oh, I should have said this, or why did I say that? All of these things can add to your anxiety levels. And I'll tell you, when you walk in there with an elevator pitch, I don't care if it's a party or a business related event, this is going to help you to be a lot more confident and you'll be able to carry on the conversation with a bit more mastery. And so that was tip number 3, memorize some type of elevator pitch. Tip number 4 is to arrive early and connect with your main contact person. This can either be the host of the event or whoever it is that invited you to the event. The reason you want to arrive early, especially if you have social anxiety, is because the worst thing you can do is walk into a room filled with strangers that are already kind of in their little cliques and circles. They're already talking, and you're the one person walking in looking for who you can connect with and wondering, well, I don't know. I don't want to interrupt these people. They're already talking to them. These people are already in a group over here. So if you arrive early, chances are there's only a few people kind of, walking around, and it's a lot easier for you to connect with a few people. You'll know more of the people who are there. And as people trickle in, you won't feel so awkward. So arriving early is a very, very important thing that will help you to feel more comfortable in the space. Then you want to go ahead and connect with that main contact person. If it's someone who invited you, ask that person to introduce you to the host. If you are going to something that maybe you found online and it's just you and you don't really know anyone there, find the host as soon as possible. This is why it's important to arrive early so they won't be so busy. And ask the host to introduce you to a few people. This way it takes the awkwardness out of having to walk into a room and just throw yourself into a conversation with someone you've never met. This helps you to meet a few people and you'll feel more of a sense of belongingness because a couple people know you by name. You've already struck up a conversation. You know the host. So make sure that you arrive early and connect with that main contact person. If it's not the host, then have that person to introduce you to the host and let them know that you want to get to know a few people. That way, you become a bit of an insider. Tip number 5, you want to be an effective listener. To be honest, if you did none of the other tips, this is the one that's going to help you the most. Because a lot of times what we do when we're nervous, we just start rambling. We start talking. And the more you talk, the further off the cliff you go, especially if you're nervous and you're just rambling aimlessly and you don't know how to wrap it up and you're freaking out and you just keep talking and talking and talking. So you want to use the 80-20 rule. Listen 80% of the time and talk 20% of the time. This is going to save you a lot of energy because, as I mentioned earlier, socializing is an expenditure of energy. All the time you spend talking, you are pouring energy out. If you have social anxiety, you want to conserve as much of your energy as possible. And so making sure that you're asking open-ended questions. Of course, you don't want to interrogate people, but ask questions. Be interested in what they have to say. You might say something such as, wow, that's so interesting. Tell me more. How did that come about? That way, they're doing the talking, you're doing the listening, the other person feels heard, and people love to talk about themselves. They'll actually feel a lot more connected to you this way, as opposed to you just standing there talking on and on about yourself. And also the best thing about this is you don't have to think about what to say. You don't have to worry about being nervous about making small talk because you're not making anything. All you're doing is allowing connection to happen. So being an effective listener is really the secret sauce to making these events and these conversations that much more magical and effective and less stressful for you. Obviously, you want to avoid having any type of agenda. Don't try to sound smart or be the expert. This might show up as interrupting people or thinking about what you're going to say while they're still talking because you're so nervous about how you're going to sound. And then what happens when you do this, you're not really listening to the person. And so it makes the conversation a bit awkward and people know when they're not really being heard. And so you want to really make sure that you don't have an agenda, that you don't want to sound smart or that you don't want to dive in and try to give unsolicited advice and be seen as a superhero. Just be there and hold the space for other people to express themselves. And you will know when to jump in and when to say things. They'll ask you questions and then you can flip it back with another question. And the more you practice this, the better you will get at it. Tip number 6 is to avoid antisocial behaviors. I know this one is pretty obvious, but we've all had those moments where it gets awkward. Maybe it's quiet and you immediately take out your cell phone. Like, do your best not to do that. Don't take out your cell phone. Don't go sit in the corner. If you're going to kind of move to the edges of the room, find someone else at the edge of the room and strike up a little conversation with them. It could be about anything, the weather, the temperature in the room, the hors d'oeuvres that they're serving, whatever. Just try to keep yourself engaged. And also remember that time limit. If you set a 2-hour time limit and you feel like you're getting really stressed out at an hour and a half, then that's okay. Shorten it. If you feel like you really just want to move to the edge of the room, go on your phone and you can't socialize anymore, you can't really think of anything else to say and you're starting to feel anxious, that's how you know the energy is capping out. And this would probably be a good time for you to wrap it up, say goodbye to the host and thank them for such a great event and go ahead and leave. And if you can't find the host, don't feel bad. You are not obligated to attend and to stay there for the duration of the whole thing. That's not really what it's about. So you really want to have compassion on yourself, know what your limits are, and honor those. And tip number 7 is to practice intentional self-care. I cannot stress this enough. If you are an introvert, then you already know this about yourself. Social situations are draining. They just are. Some are less draining than others, but they're all draining. And so the more people and the more energy and conversations you have going on around you, the more energy is being taken out. So be mindful about how you feel afterwards. If you need to take a day where you don't take phone calls and don't hang out with people, then honor that about yourself. Take those few days of just being to yourself. Yes, I know you may have to go to work still and do different things. I'm not talking about completely socially isolating. I'm just saying that if someone invites you out to something the next day, don't tell them yes, knowing that you really don't want to be bothered. Honor your own needs and find out what that self-care looks like for you and really pour into yourself. Even if you don't feel drained, if you feel that you went to some type of networking event, a conference, a dinner or a brunch of some sort, you had a great time, still make sure you go home, take a bath, maybe go for a walk, write in your journal, do something to pour into yourself because it may take you 10 or 12 hours to really feel the impact of that social event. And so you don't want to slip down into a depression or have higher stress levels the following day because you didn't even realize that you had to kind of come down right off of all the nerves to feel, what your energy expenditure was. And this is not a bad thing. It's just how it is. When you're an introvert, being around large groups of people for an extended time is draining. So even if you don't feel it in the moment, just assume that there has been an expenditure of energy and find out what are some ways that you're going to pour that back into yourself proactively so that you can continue to move forward and feel optimistic and be at your best. So there you have it. Those are my 7 tips for how to deal with social anxiety if you're an entrepreneur. If you put these into practice, they're going to help you be a lot more confident in social situations so that you can put yourself across, build those connections with like-minded people, and grow in your personal and professional goals. If you enjoyed this tip today, I hope that you will let me know on social media using hashtag #YesToYouPod. Of course, when you do, I'll give you a shout out on a future episode. If you have any questions or would like to submit an idea for a future show or a weekly wellness tip, feel free to email me at feedback@yestoyoupodcast.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast player so that you'll be the first to get my weekly wellness tip every Thursday. And finally, if you haven't already, be sure to visit rohiniwellness.com/vision to download my free Create Your Vision workbook. This is an 11-page guide that's going to walk you through 4 steps to create a powerful vision for the life that you want. I hope that you have a truly amazing weekend, and I will catch you next time right here on the Yes to You podcast.